Ricky Gervais arrived at the Lorraine studio with the kind of swagger that only someone who has roasted half of Hollywood could carry, and from the moment he stepped onto the set, the energy shifted in a way the audience didn't quite expect, as if two opposite storm fronts had collided at just the wrong moment. Lorraine Kelly, warm-smiled but clearly bracing herself, welcomed him politely, yet even in that first exchange, anyone paying attention could sense a spark waiting to become a flame, because Gervais wasn't in the mood for soft questions or polite morning show diplomacy. He came armed with his usual sharp tongue and unapologetic honesty. The conversation began normally enough, discussing his latest projects, his comedic approach, and his trademark irreverence, but Lorraine, needing the interview to stay within the safe boundaries of morning television, gently pushed him on the controversies he often sparks online. Ricky laughed it off at first, trying to sidestep what he clearly found repetitive, but as she continued pressing, the humor on his face began to fade, replaced by a level of irritation he didn't bother hiding. When Lorraine brought up the criticism surrounding his stand-up specials, Ricky fired back with the kind of bluntness that could split a room instantly, insisting that comedy must be free, raw, and unrestricted. He accused the industry, and by extension, interviewers, of tiptoeing around imaginary landmines, a comment that visibly tightened Lorraine's expression as she attempted to maintain her characteristic calm smile despite the rising tension. Still trying to rein the interview back into safer waters, Lorraine attempted to pivot to a lighter topic, but Ricky interrupted her mid-sentence, calling out what he described as the forced niceness of daytime TV, a remark that drew a few gasps from the audience and caused one of the producers behind the cameras to step forward uncertainly, ready to intervene if needed. The clash truly ignited when Lorraine responded with a rare firmness, telling Ricky that while humor has its place, respect and responsibility matter too, especially on live television watched by families. Ricky immediately retorted that he wasn't there to babysit anyone's moral compass, and that art and offense were inseparable. The air thickened, tension rippling visibly as each sentence landed harder than the last. A brief silence fell between them, but instead of cooling, the moment intensified when Lorraine attempted to clarify a question and Ricky accused her of twisting his words, like tabloids do. That line hit harder than he might have expected. Lorraine's eyes narrowed, and the polite professionalism slipped just enough for viewers to see she wasn't having it anymore. Trying to salvage control, Lorraine corrected him with a steady tone, reminding him that she had been doing interviews longer than most comedians had been telling jokes. Ricky smirked at the remark in a way that was half amusement, half challenge, and replied that longevity didn't equal accuracy, another jab that made the audience shift uncomfortably in their seats. Backstage staff exchanged frantic glances as the interview continued spiraling, the conversation now far from entertainment and deep into a battle of principles neither one intended to lose. Cameras kept rolling, but the atmosphere felt like something that wasn't meant to be televised, a raw, unfiltered confrontation that had escaped the boundaries of the show. When Lorraine attempted once again to steer the interview toward Ricky's charitable work, trying desperately to soften the mood, he cut her off with a comment questioning why the media always sanitizes real discussions with fake positivity. Lorraine shot back that positivity isn't fake, kindness is a choice, and the sharpness in her tone surprised even herself. Ricky leaned back, folding his arms, challenging her with his posture alone, and asked whether she'd prefer he pretend to be someone he wasn't just to keep things comfortable. Lorraine countered that there's a difference between honesty and hostility, and viewers could almost feel the studio lights heat up as the exchange intensified. The moment the confrontation tipped into point of no return came when Ricky lightly mocked the format of the show, saying it treated celebrities like fragile ornaments. Lorraine's response was swift and cutting, telling him that being a guest requires respect for the platform. Ricky shrugged, replying that respect is earned, not granted automatically. That was the line that shifted everything. Lorraine's cheeks flushed, her voice sharpened, and she reminded him sternly that he'd been welcomed onto the show with nothing but courtesy. Ricky responded that courtesy wasn't the same as honesty, and the room practically vibrated from the collision of their arguments. The producers could no longer stay hands-off. One approached the edge of the set, signaling, not subtly, that the interview needed to end. Lorraine saw the cue but continued speaking, trying to address one final point, but Ricky stood up slightly in his seat, gesturing animatedly as he spoke over her. The control room scrambled to mute microphones and prepare emergency transitions, but the confrontation was already playing out too quickly, each second escalating despite attempts to contain it. Lorraine said firmly, "Ricky, you're being unfair," and Ricky countered, "I'm being real," delivering the line like the final spark over a powder keg. When Lorraine attempted to cut to commercial, Ricky sarcastically clapped, telling her it was the safest decision she'd made all morning. That was enough. A floor manager stepped in, approaching Ricky physically, and though it didn't become a dramatic removal, it was unmistakably a request for him to leave the set. Ricky rose from his chair with an incredulous laugh, shaking his head, muttering something about how people can't handle disagreement anymore. Lorraine remained seated, composed but visibly shaken, hands folded tightly in her lap as she stared ahead, refusing to look away from the cameras. As he exited the stage, several crew members avoided eye contact, while others whispered hurriedly into their headsets. The audience sat frozen, unsure whether to clap, stay quiet, or pretend nothing had happened. Lorraine finally exhaled, her professional mask returning, though thinner and more fragile than usual. The show cut to commercial, but by then clips were already being recorded on viewers' phones, shared online, and spreading like wildfire across social platforms. The confrontation became the #1 trending topic within minutes, sparking debates, memes, and polarized opinions. Fans of Ricky defended him fiercely, praising his refusal to bend or soften his personality for daytime television, arguing that sincerity should never be punished. Supporters of Lorraine countered that professionalism and respect matter, especially on live broadcasts with wide audiences. Entertainment journalists dissected the exchange from every angle, analyzing tone, body language, intent, and implications, treating the confrontation like a case study in modern celebrity media dynamics. The debate grew larger, transforming into conversations about free speech, sensitivity, and the role of comedy in public culture. Meanwhile, Lorraine addressed the incident later in the show with remarkable composure, acknowledging tensions without indulging in drama, reaffirming that her platform values open discussion, but not at the expense of civility. Her statement earned quiet applause from the audience. Ricky remained unapologetic, posting a cryptic online message about truth being uncomfortable, which his fans interpreted as a subtle reference to the clash. Industry insiders speculated about whether he'd be invited back, or if he'd ever accept such an invitation again. Producers of the show released a carefully worded statement emphasizing professionalism, mutual respect, and the unpredictable nature of live television. They neither blamed nor defended either party, attempting to neutralize the narrative without fueling further controversy. As days passed, the incident continued to spark conversation, with talk shows, podcasts, and news outlets replaying the clip, each offering different interpretations of who was right, who was wrong, and whether the confrontation was inevitable given the personalities involved. Ricky, known for thriving in controversy, leaned into the attention, discussing artistic freedom in later interviews, while Lorraine quietly maintained her stance, refusing to turn the encounter into a prolonged feud, demonstrating the grace and restraint her viewers admired. Yet the moment remained etched in public memory, the morning when two strong personalities collided so fiercely that the facade of polite television cracked open, revealing something raw and human beneath the scripted surface. And though both moved on, the incident served as a compelling reminder that live television, no matter how polished, can become unpredictable when authenticity and expectation clash in the most unexpected ways.